All right, today on episode 2 of Startup Nation, Mike and I are going to talk about a couple things. One, how you make a hobby into a business, if you should make a hobby into a business, and some of the decisions that go about doing that. We get a lot of questions from people out there saying, well, what business should I start? Should it be something I'm already doing? How do you start it? And what does that look like? And so I think it's really important for people to understand that there should be a lot of thought going into that. And I think Mike is going to have some pretty cool insight onto that too, based on his story. So I'm going to let you start with your story and how that works.
I actually am super excited for this topic. We've been chatting about this off camera. I actually think and this is literally, we talked about this like a minute ago. I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, and this is cool that we're different like this, is are you wanting to start a business because you love business? Or are you wanting to start a business because you love a specific thing, right? We're different in the fact that I am an entrepreneur, but my passion is much more about businesses that I am passionate about the actual
function of the business.
Function, service, whatever it is. Whereas I think on your end, you have a lot more natural like business passion, right? Whereas I've learned business and I've learned to enjoy the growth of stuff, but it's definitely not like I don't know that I could go and start a business. I asked myself this question, and this probably answers it for a lot of people. Could you think of something silly to yourself? Could I go and start and enjoy for a long time, let's call it 5-10 years, a business selling water bottles? I know me, I probably couldn't. Just because I wouldn't be fucking... And I could probably figure out a way to make it profitable because I have enough business intellect, but I just know myself, I couldn't do that. Whereas if you could tell yourself, well, yeah, if I could make this bottle cost less and I could push sales and we could grow it to fucking 10x, I could be passionate about that, then maybe shit, you're more interested in business. And I know that's like a bad way to explain it, but I think it's kind of cool. To me, I don't know if I ever at a point made the conscious decision to say, hey, you know what? I'm a trainer, I like working out, let me make this the rest of my life, like as a career. I just think I've always been obsessed with like growth. So it was like the only natural steps was like, I was a trainer, hey, the next natural step is like to own a gym or something like that.
So let me ask you a question on that, because I get this a lot from people. So say we have, for example, we know somebody that is a hairdresser, Lucia, and a couple other people that do different things. So when would it be a situation where they're passionate about something, but then is it something that they want to necessarily do? Joe is a good example for SDG&E. He likes his job, but then you ask yourself, is this something, if I all of a sudden make it from my passion or my hobby to my career where I'm married and obsessed with it, now do you lose that interest?
That's a great question, because I didn't think of it that way, and it's really good, because had you have asked me, hey, Michael, do you want to be a trainer for the rest of your life? Nothing against training. I love training. Yeah. But I would have said no. Yeah, no. I don't want to be, and this isn't from a standpoint of like caring what others think or fucking worried about if my body can stand up to it. Like, I'm not that fucking jacked in the gym anyway. So, but I would have said no purely from a worry of like, no ability to grow. And I don't know whether that's just lack of like open-mindedness to me, because there is ability to scale that, but which is a really good question. But had you have said, Michael, could you see yourself owning gyms or operating gyms the rest of your life? I could say yes.
And that's the same thing, like I had that discussion with Joe on the way home from soccer the other night. I just said, well, if you eventually become a trainer, would you want to be a trainer for the next 10 years? And he said, no. I said, okay, would you want to own a gym for the next 15 years? And you got to get to that point where you say yes, and if you don't, it's probably not the path you should take. So, for example, somebody wants to be a hairdresser. Do you want to do hair the rest of your life? No. Do you want to be there every day or make sure that your salon works? I don't know, because I think it requires too much babysitting. Okay, well then maybe, even though that's something you do for a living now, maybe isn't the way you want to go.
It's cool, because to use Lucia, and she listens, shout out Lucia. Yep. she said the same thing. She works in the industry, so she's already taken it past a hobby. It's already a career, which is she works as a hairdresser, but she works in someone else's place. I think the question to yourself is you almost answer it straight away. If you even get any inkling in your head that you could do something better than where you're at, and I'm not saying, hey, you're just talking shit on your boss, like, fuck you, I can do better. But like, you genuinely think, hey, look, I could make, from an unbiased, unemotional standpoint, hey, I think I could make this better. I think I have an idea where this would be more interesting to customers, blah, blah, whatever. The experience is better. Then at least that tells you, okay, cool, maybe I should think about doing this by myself. Yeah. And then like you said, and it's like, well, okay, cool. Now let me really go and talk to someone that has done that before. Yeah. Let me see what their day in the life is like. Because I think a lot of people see this entrepreneurial thing, and this is something important to talk about, is like, trust me, I know how it looks like when fucking people come to the gym. It looks like we just talk shit to each other the whole time.
Especially somebody like me that's done it for 10 years. They're like, damn, Nate, how are you freaking working out till 10 o'clock in the morning? Yeah. You're like, you don't know what it took for me to get there, right?
And I'm not saying by any means, like, we obviously thoroughly enjoy what we do, but it's like, ask someone what the real thing is like and what's it really like the first year of the business and things like that. Because if someone sees me now, how I operate one of the gyms or something like that, they might say, oh, it looks chill. Yeah. Looks like however, if they ask what the story is like, now I wouldn't change it ever, but I would just say, hey, look, you want to start a gym? You've got to understand you have to be there from start to finish for at least the first fucking 6 months minimum, if not like year. Like we were very lucky. I will say it, like, if not years and years and years. If you genuinely think you can do that, cool, think about it.
Well, then, and there's all the other questions that come along with that. Does your spouse and or your kids and your family accept that, right? I mean, and then reality is that, like, for example, with Green Guard is a service company. We'll talk about products and services in another episode because I think it's a big thing to talk about. Services are the easiest to penetrate that industry, but Green Guard basically grew very slowly for the first 4.5 years of its existence. All of a sudden we adopted a specific service. It became a core competency, and I went from making a lot of money to basically making no money overnight because I decided to make that jump to entrepreneurship. And I legitimately worked from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. I'm not kidding, 6 days a week. Not telling you have to do that, but I am psychotic when it comes to not losing and not failing. Failing is a relative term. Made many mistakes when it comes to failing, but not complete failure, not catastrophic failure. And I did that for probably almost a year, put a lot of strain on the marriage. Even though we had a common agreement, it's one thing to say you can do it, saying, hey, babe, I'll support you. It's another thing when it actually is happening. It's trust me. And then I gained a significant amount of weight and all that crap that goes along with working way too much. But it got to me where I'm at now. It made me a significantly stronger person mentally, and it taught me a ton. And to Mike's point, I would never take it back, right? But those are the types of things where, believe me, it's not fun a lot of the time. I talk in classes at the local college, and I tell them, because everybody thinks entrepreneurship is sexy. A lot of times it's very fun, but there's times where you're like, what in the hell did I get myself?
Gary Vee says it well, and you hear me reference him all the time, because probably a lot of my like business inspiration, or whatever you want to call it, like stuff comes from him. He says, really because a lot of people that go into entrepreneurship, they've probably established themselves to a fairly high level in that field or in some industry to have the confidence to go, okay, cool, I'm going to go and do something. Like, for example, you were clearly killing it as a salesperson. It wasn't like you had just started as a salesperson last week and you're like, you know what, fuck, you know what I mean? Exactly. And same with me, like I was a great trainer. It wasn't like I just trained a couple of things. So
it's not like you had 3 sessions of 24 Hour Fitness and said, okay, I can kill 24 Hour Fitness.
Exactly. And what he says is like, to him, the difference is, are you willing to be the last line of the defense? And it's very easy to quickly say, yep, cool, yeah, sure. But I generally mean, when you are an entrepreneur, it basically means you own the place, or you are the CEO, whatever the fuck you want to do it, you're the founder. You should be basically the last line of the defense, at least initially. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so if there's a fire to put out, not literally, like if there's a problem in the business, are you ready to be the final person who makes the decision that either may solve it or make the place crash and burn, because that's what it is.
Let me give you an example of that. So many people are used to like going straight to their superior and saying, how do I solve this? How do I solve this? It sounds like, oh, no big deal, I'll just answer. But when shit really hits the fan, there's nobody you can go to. Yeah. It is you. I remember in my previous building, now that we're out of it, we probably can say this, where this was actually where I was working full time for the company. I get called at like 2 a.m. by the general manager at the time, and he said, Nate, I just got a call from the fire department. I'm like, fuck. What, like when you get a call at 2 a.m, you're like, what in the hell happened? And he goes, the building is on fire. The fire department's there. They put it out, but one of your dryers, so we used to wash our own rags, the grease would still stay on them because the dryer got so hot. It would combust the grease, cause fire. It had basically smoked half of, luckily, the false ceiling. They put it out right away. Somebody happened to be driving by our building and see smoke coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning. If that didn't happen, there could be a drastically different conversation right now. And so I had to get up at 2 a.m. They had to literally break our door open. So I had to go there and basically stay there till 8 a.m. to call a locksmith because the building was now not secure, because it's not like a fireman's going to sit there. And I was sitting there literally sweeping up soot in my sandals because I just jumped out and went over there and had to deal with it, right? That's not something you're going to do as an employee. Things like that will happen, and you'll hear some cool stories like that over these episodes. I have more than I want to admit of stories like that.
I mean, just like you to get ahead of it, not to do. Yeah. Again, I always like to say this. By no means is me saying that like what I do is any harder than any other entrepreneur in the world. It's not. They probably all deal with their own versions of this. Yeah. But 100%, when you can get to the point where things that should be a big issue, things that are clearly a big issue to other people, and they don't even faze you, I feel like you're making progress. You are. Because I remember initially when I would first get into shit, things that were minuscule problems would fucking worry the shit out of me. Now I had to be the one who solved it, but like 100%. But then eventually, literally, there is not a day goes by where there isn't some fire to put out. Yeah. Whether it's employees hating each other, whether it's fucking something going wrong, whether it's financial, whatever it is, there's always something going wrong, and you just have to ask yourself, am I ready enough to deal with that stress, mentally strong enough? Because guess what? Entrepreneurship is it is not a gradual increase. It is I saw some meme the other day that says, hey, entrepreneurship is like this. Hey, wake up. I love what I do. Fuck this. I hate this. We're going to fail. We're the best in the world. Yeah. We're going to fucking go out of business. And it's fucking literally multiple times in my short entrepreneur career, in the same day, I have thought we were going to go out of business, and I have thought we were going to absolutely fucking crush it.
It's crazy how that works. And it's just, especially when you're talking about cash flow situations and things, when it comes to financing, it's very true. I've been in situations where, and this was many years ago, I literally transfer money out of my own savings account to cover, say, payroll. And then the next day we get $30,000 in checks, and that was double or triple the payroll, right? And it wasn't like the money was there. We just literally didn't have it in the bank account. And mind you, that was 4 or 5 years ago. But those are the types of things where, if you freak out and can't handle those types of situations, you might not be ready. That doesn't mean if you want to become an entrepreneur, you're never going to be fully prepared, ever. But you have to be able to handle those situations with some form of confidence and some form of okay, I can at least get through them. Because they're going to happen. And so that's where we went back to kind of take a couple steps back, where do you want your passion, like George, a good friend of ours that's doing the video here, said he used to do graphic design. And second he starts doing that from as a career, he didn't enjoy it any longer because now it's a job. And so you have to ask yourself, if I do this and it's just a passion, I do it on the side or whatever, and all of a sudden it becomes a career, will you still truly enjoy it? And it's really important to ask yourself that.
That's a really good question. And I've been one who was, I don't know if it was ego or whatever it was, who maybe it's just me, I've always wanted to be all in on shit. Yeah. Whereas I think the best thing to do, and again, this is coming from the dude who always tells people quit their jobs and go after what they want. I genuinely think, I give that advice after I feel like people know that they want to do it. I genuinely think start something as a side hustle. Yeah. Not from the standpoint of minimize risk and shit, because that's not me, but more from the standpoint of it'll tell you whether it's something you're willing to do when you have to, as opposed to something you just want to do when you want to. And to be honest, the real only variable there is the amount of work you're willing to put into something. Well, hobbies genuinely are shit you do when you want to. Yeah. It becomes a possible career when you can also do it when you want to, but when you really don't want to and you have to, you do it anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing that Mike's said a bunch of times to people, and so I'll reiterate what he says, is if you get super excited about something, you're like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be, and then all of a sudden in a week or two or even a month, you're not as passionate about it, not excited about it, do not do it. Yeah. Because if you can't last a month, there is zero chance you're going to last 10 years. 100%. It's just not going to happen, right?
And so you should know pretty quickly. Yeah, like, a good indication initially, we talked about it with Joe, a good indication initially is when normally all these things start as like you already have something you're doing at work, whatever. Lucia, for example, normally it's going to start, she works as a hairdresser, her thoughts of opening her own thing has started while she already is doing something. Mm-hmm. If you are actually going and spending time on your free time to pursue it, look into it, whatever it is, that's a good first indication. Yeah. If that stops relatively quickly and you find yourself being like, fuck, I should really keep looking at this, then fuck, that's almost like, hey, red light.
Or if something is simple and people don't want to hear this, but like, I really need to go spend time with my kids or my dogs or go hiking, I have to get out. Because the reality is, and some people might argue this, but the work-life balance does tilt to the one side pretty heavily in the very beginning. It does. And there are exceptions to the rule, I promise you, but I've also started 5 businesses and I'm very familiar with what it takes to make them successful.
And it's almost like, I think it's a good question because this is for sure true. If you're going to go start a business, like you said, to me, we both believe 100% probably the most important thing is your willingness to work. Your work ethic, yeah. Work ethic is, obviously there's like good ideas and execution, etc. But like the general basic idea of like, are you willing to put in enough work is a huge thing for, I think, both of us. If it's not, like, you've just got to ask yourself the question and be very real, because we always talk about shit that it's not easy to be real with yourself, some of these things. If you look and say, hey, you know what? I'm not willing to not go out on Friday nights. I'm not willing to give up weekends and work on weekends. I'm not willing to wake up at early mornings and stay late nights. I just want to keep this 9 to 5 or whatever it may be and have weekends off and go on vacations. There's nothing wrong with that. And hey, you probably still can do the business. You've just got to be smart about how you do it. You've got to get a partner. You've got to get someone who combined you can put in the right amount of work. The model has to fit. The model has to fit, things like that. And I'll speak from my short experiences with this meal prep company we have. It was never going to be something that I was willing to work the usual amount of time I would. I was never going to spend 18 hours a day fucking on a meal prep company alone. Yeah. However, because of that, I went into the business with 2 partners. Yeah. One of which does the majority of the actual like labor work. He's the chef. And the other 2 of us, this is technically our side hustle. And we put in as much work as we can on it, I believe. But at the same time, I would have definitely failed had I decided to go in and done a meal prep company by myself, thinking I was going to make sense.
Also understand though, if you do that, you're sharing income and everything else, right?
And then, exactly.
And then you got to deal with partners, which we'll go in another episode, can be a nightmare. 100%. And it also, because in theory then it grows a third slower for him, right? Or two-thirds slower because he's only getting a third of the business. And that's if they're equal, right?
It's something to be, I'm probably the person who like jumps into things first, but like that's a really good point. And so that's just what I've done. So that's probably, I shouldn't have been like that. But to Nate's point as well, you can do it as well and just start the business and hire a lot of people. However, like Nate said earlier, someone who doesn't, I love this thing that Gary Vee puts out. He's like, you can never expect someone to work as hard as you unless they have the same equity in the business as you. Yeah. Never gonna fucking happen. I don't care how passionate they are. So you've just got to understand that they're automatically not gonna be as hardworking as you, but also you've got to understand how much fucking capital that's going to take to start. All my businesses have 2 of my 3 businesses have started with very little capital. However, one of them started with more capital, and we had the ability to start with a much larger team.
Yep.
But I will say, it didn't grow as efficiently as the first one, because the first one was started with 2 people who owned the place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We had way less capital, but we had way more drive. And it's like...
You both had a larger following and everything
Like you
else,
said,
right?
there's sacrifice and gain and benefits to all different avenues.
Yeah, you just gotta know that when it comes to getting partners and building the business plan is. And then the other thing with partners, and we'll go into this in much more detail in other podcasts, but you better damn well understand that their intentions are going to be the same as your intentions when it comes to like what the 5 and 10 year road looks like. You got to know what their intentions are when it comes to responsibilities and all that stuff. Like that's 2 of the businesses that I've had didn't work out specifically because of that, which is why I've learned it. And then, so Green Guard, my main business, myself and my general manager, and he's also minority owner, which I gave him equity, have very, very clear understanding of what our roles are and our responsibilities, and it's been going now for 4 years strong. Zero issues relative to anything major happening, and it's because there's no lack of clarity on the responsibility piece.
So I actually have a question on that, and sorry to stray from the main concept, but like, for example, your partner, right, in this place. Say you obviously both know you're heading in the right direction, you know the intentions, you know the roles, etc., and they're clearly defined. Is it a deal breaker to you for him to be your partner? If when you originally made that plan for him to be your partner, and you said, hey, look, I want to grow this, let's just for simplicity say 10 years, and he says, you know what, Nate, I want to grow it to the same extent, but I know 5 years from now I want to sell it and move to fucking Bermuda. Is that I don't know if not Bermuda's a place.
Bermuda, I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, I want to move to fucking Jamaica or whatever. Fuck, I don't know. I want to move to Jamaica. Is that a deal breaker for you? Because technically they're different. However, is it just simply the fact that he wants to, for the time he's part of the business, to fulfill his roles that you need? It's actually like, what's that?
It really depends on the importance of the role. For him, yes, it would have been, because the reality is without him, my goals can't be met, right? Because then I'm all of a sudden stuck in the shit.
Because your goal was
to pull myself out early.
Yourself, right.
And so if it's somebody where it's like, I'll give an example for like the gym. If you decide, I'm going to just decide I want to step away, I'm going to get a trainer that's really dynamic, minority ownership, because then they can kind of handle all the bullshit I can handle, and they have to leave in 5 years, probably nothing in the world because you can find somebody else like that. Green Guard itself has an obscene amount of processes and procedures to automate things and all that. And for somebody else to learn that, it could take 2 years to get really good at it.
I think
so. That's the difference. Is it really is dictated based on the responsibility and the role they play.
The only reason I ask, and it's probably from a selfish standpoint, because I learn a lot from Nate, as I'm sure most know. We recently, for the meal prep company, had a thing where, maybe it's just me, I've always been expansion always and always. Like I always just want to grow. Whether it's even going to make the business more profitable or not, I don't know. But I've just always wanted to grow, right? Just bigger is always better to me for some reason. However, we got to a standpoint where we had the opportunity to expand. It would have required more risk and blah, blah. However, we had never had the discussion of, and again, we'll probably go into this other because we'd have never had the discussion of like, what's the plans? And it was always thought that one of the partners was going to be the majority of the labor hours. So it was important that his decision, although a minority stake in the company, stopped us from that expansion because his role is the one that requires the amount of hours there. Mm-hmm. So a expansion in moving locations and increasing productivity didn't necessarily change my role. However, it dramatically changed his role because he would have had to travel to work. He would have had to put more hours in. And although we went into the company feeling like his role in the company wasn't the direction of the company, he automatically stopped that expansion. And I think since then we've made changes and we all agree with where we're at. But I think that was something to be super true, which is like, hey, where do you want to be to your partner 5 years from now? If both of our plans are to not be there, cool, that's fine. We just have to understand that and
see how you can grow in that time period.
Right, and understand either part ways or bring someone in who can take that role, or okay, you want to leave, I'm then relying on you want to leave, you're relying on me to be here, but then I want to leave, that doesn't work. And so I think it's super important.
I think it sounds kind of vicious, but it's the reality behind business is that everybody is replaceable. We'll talk about that when it comes to like working with friends and family, but I had a friend that worked for the business basically from 2009 to 2014 or 15. He basically ran the company until I could transfer over full time. We started growing too quickly, and I said it many times, we're still great friends, so this isn't to bash him. And people hate this because it's probably a pretty ruthless statement, but everybody's replaceable. And I always said, the CEO of eBay is replaceable, you are fucking replaceable. I am replaceable. If you find the right person, they are replaceable. And so if you make that doesn't mean you're not gonna hit major road bumps, and there's exceptions. I mean, like, but even like the guy that started Apple, right? I mean, he literally put them on the map, right? And ever since he passed, they're still, clearly they're not doing quite as good, but they're still there, right? And he was like, I mean, he was the matriarch. Like, he was the guy that literally put them on the map, right? So that's the point, is that people have to understand that, and you've got to position your business that way too, right? So even though my GM, if you were to leave, yes, we could survive. It'd be a pain in the ass, but the reality is that you automate things and you build processes so you can do that. Yeah. And so if that thing comes up, because the reality is no much how much you want to plan for things, a partner in your business could have said, hey, yeah, I don't mind driving at 100 miles. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Yeah. He has a child. Now all of a sudden that changes. And so you still have to then plan for, for that opportunity, right? Because shit changes. And that's just the nature of business. So that is, these are the type of discussions we're going to have on every episode. I think it'll be quite helpful. People really understand that these are real life examples. You're going to hear a bunch of funny stories and a lot of challenges that we've had, and also some advice that's going to help you hopefully not make as many mistakes as I've made over my 9-10 years. And really appreciate you listening. Again, like, subscribe, it's Startup Nation, and we really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.